Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to tonight's second half. Before we jump into this very informative second half, I've got a couple links I'd like to share with you all. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's second half, shall we? All right, guys, so as of late, I've been talking a lot about Dulce, deep underground military bases, DUMBs, alien genetic programs that correspond with government genetic programs, and the one ruling government, which their name starts with a B. All day today, I have been working on an upload or researching an upload that has literally opened my eyes to an atrocity that occurred about a year and a half ago. A possible explanation about, if I was a betting man, I would say 85% lie. It will be up tomorrow. It will be tomorrow's upload. But I'm apprehensive about sharing it because I don't want to rock the boat. But then again, I do. But this second half is jam-packed full of just amazingly terrifying information shared to us by an American hero. Let's get into it. Tonight's second half is going to be a lecture given by Milton William Cooper on November 17th, 1989, in Los Angeles, California. For those of you who do not know who I am, I was raised in a military family. My family, my ancestors, since they came to this country, have been government people. We have served in the military. We have been patriots. We have fought in all of the wars. We care about this country and believe in the Constitution of the United States. We know, as many people don't know, that the Constitution of the United States of America is the United States of America. And that's why we've always been ready to do things needed to preserve and protect it. When I left home, I went into the Air Force, the Strategic Air Command. As a child, I had heard stories from my father and other pilots, my father was a pilot, about Foo Fighters, UFOs, strange crafts that were not made on this earth. And as a kid, you hear it in passing, and it's neat, and you giggle about it, and you go out and play spaceman, and you forget it. When I was in the Air Force, I met men who had participated in the alien crashed craft recoveries. Now this intrigued me, it interested me, but it was usually after quite a few bottles of beer that these stories would come out, and sometimes the next morning I couldn't remember what the heck the guy said. When I left the Air Force, I went into the Navy, and this is where everything began to happen for me. I had originally intended to just go from service to service and do something that very few people had ever done before. I was very adventurous, a very crazy young man, and I thought that it would be a pretty exciting life. I volunteered for submarines, and while on submarine USS Tyroot, SS-416, in a transit between Portland/Seattle area and Pearl Harbor, which was our home port, the Pearl Harbor sub base. As the port lookout, I saw a craft, saucer-shaped, the size of a Midway class carrier, aircraft carrier. For those of you who don't know how big it is, it's huge. Come up out of the water approximately 2.5 nautical miles off the port bow, which is about 45 degrees to the left on the pointy end of the submarine. It tumbled slowly on its own axis and went up into the clouds. It appeared to be moving slowly to me, at a distance of 2.5 nautical miles, but in reality it was moving pretty fast because it came up out of the water, did a few tumbles, and it was gone. I then reported it to the officer on deck. I didn't tell him what it was that I saw because my daddy didn't raise no fools. And in case nobody else saw it, I didn't want to be the only loony on board the ship. So I asked the officer of the deck to help me cover the area, and he did, which is common for officers and lookouts to help each other while on the bridge watch because they all hang together if something happens. After a few seconds of watching, the same craft, or another craft exactly like it, came down out of the clouds, tumbled again on its own axis, and went into the water. Ensign Ball, who was the officer on deck, was literally shocked. What could I say? Seaman DiGerolamo, who was the starboard lookout, had also witnessed this, and Ensign Ball called the captain to the bridge, who was followed by the chief quartermaster, who brought a 35mm camera. And we watched for between 7 and 10 minutes the same craft, or different craft that looked exactly alike, enter and leave the water. It was an incredible show. I don't know if they knew we were there or even if they cared, but the craft did not glow. They were metal. They were machines without a doubt. They were obviously intelligently guided. They were huge, and having been in the Air Force and the Navy, and knowing what it takes, I knew without a doubt, and know it today, that that machine was not made on the face of this earth. Because there's nothing that man can make that can fly through the air at that speed like that, tumble on its own axis, and enter the water and effectively fly beneath the sea. If you've ever aboard an airplane and then gone aboard a submarine, I know there's probably some of you in this room who had visited a submarine at one time or another. You can readily see, just without even any of the technicalities involved, how difficult such a thing would be to do. Where would it be built, that size? It was absolutely incredible. It changed my life because then all the stories I had heard all my life I knew were true. And I began seeing the world in a different light. It wasn't long after that I was trained by the Naval Security and Intelligence. I was sent to Vietnam. I was assigned as a patrol boat captain, first in Da Nang Harbor. Given a crew, given a multi-million-dollar patrol boat, my job was to gather intelligence from the people who lived around the harbor and the fishermen who transited the harbor, maintain the safety and security of the harbor and the shipping. After about 5 months, I was sent up north to the DMZ, to a place called Quy Viet on the Taken River. Our base camp was at the river's mouth. We were only 3 miles south of the North Vietnamese border, and our job was to patrol the Taken River from the river mouth to Dang Ha, and then up to Quang Tri, cut off to Quang Tri City, again to get to know the people on the bank, gather intelligence, and to patrol every night and maintain the safety and security of the river and the river's traffic. It was while there that I discovered that there was a tremendous amount of UFO and alien activity in Vietnam. It was always reported in official messages as enemy helicopters. Now, any of you who know anything about the Vietnam War know that the North Vietnamese did not have any helicopters, especially after our first couple air raids in the North Vietnam. Even if they had, they would not have been so foolish to bring them over the DMZ, because that would have ensured their demise. Our troops were fired on occasionally by these enemy helicopters. Enemy troops were fired on occasionally by these enemy helicopters, and occasionally people would disappear. And in one instance that I know for sure, at least one entire village disappeared one night because of an alien activity. The reason they used the term enemy helicopters in messages and dispatches was that in Vietnam, you could be overrun at any time, no matter where you were. They did not bring crypto encoding equipment into Vietnam. I'm talking about the machinery. What we did is we had crypto tables, and once every 24 hours, those codes would be no good. So that's what we used. We also, because of the inability to use crypto transmitting equipment, had to devise code words such as enemy helicopters. When I left Vietnam, I was eventually attached to a headquarters staff of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet at Makalapa, Hawaii, which is a little hill overlooking Pearl Harbor. It's a beautiful white building up there, and I was specifically attached to the intelligence briefing team of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet. It was during this tour of duty that, in the course of my duties, documents were placed in my hands that were so unbelievable and so incredible that it took me quite a while to adjust to the fact that what I was seeing was real. Now, for those of you who don't understand how I could come and see this information, let me give you a little short course in security clearance and the need to know, and how you see classified information if you are in the military or in the government. It doesn't matter which, the rules are the same. Number one, you need a security clearance. And you've got to have clearance at that level that the information you want to see is classified at. In this instance, it is classified top secret, magic, restricted information, which I came to find out later is the highest security classification in the nation. To get that type of clearance, all you have to have is a Federal Bureau of Investigation's background check, which takes about 6 months. And they send federal agents to your home, to your old schools, to all of your teachers, to your friends, to everybody you put down on your security clearance forms, to all your old addresses, your neighbors, everybody that you've worked for. And it's embarrassing because they don't tell them what they're checking on. They just show them their identification and start asking them questions, and that's when you find out who's your friend and who is not. Because a lot of the people get scared and think, Bill just robbed a bank, and I'm not talking to him anymore. Now, once you get that, it's called a BI. And for those of you who have received a copy of my service record, look on the first page, the DD 214, where it says Security Clearance. You will see the term BI. That's a Bureau of Investigation clearance. Now, at that point, you have the clearance for everything, including top secret and above. What determines what you get to see is your need to know, and the job that you have determines what your need to know is. I was assigned to the intelligence briefing team of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, who had to know everything concerning his area of operations, which was 1/2 of the Earth's surface, the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and all the land masses in between. Believe it or not, if we go to war, if we ever go to war, it's the United States Navy that strikes the first blow and attempts to keep the enemy at bay well, we can get ourselves together, at least historically. Nuclear weapons have kind of done away with that concept, but military commanders like to talk about it anyway. Because of this, and you have no conception of the amount of material and information that an area commander has to know, it's unbelievable. And he has to keep track of this. He has to keep on top of it. He has to know what's happening. He has to make the right decisions because it's almost humanly impossible for anyone to do that. They'll have what's called a briefing team, and it's our job to make sure that he has the correct information all the time on a 24-hour basis. And every morning between 8 and 9 a.m., we would give a briefing which covered everything that happened in the previous 24 hours and everything scheduled to happen in the next 24 hours, and all the pertinent intelligence reports that we had received since the last briefing that he needed to know, and that his staff members needed to know. Occasionally, we would get messages marked top secret, magic, restricted information, and it would be coded in such a way that all you had were answers to questions which you didn't know what the questions were, so you really didn't know what the message was all about. But eventually, I found myself in possession holding two documents, one called Project Grudge and another one called Operation Majority. Project Grudge contained the history of alien involvement since around 1936, and it began talking about Germany's involvement with a crashed disk that they had recovered in 1936 and were attempting to duplicate the technology. They were not successful despite what all of these Nazi hunters want to tell you. If they had been successful, we would not have won the war, because you cannot beat those weapons, you cannot outfly those crafts, you cannot even think about it with conventional aircraft. If Germany had been successful, we would now have a German flag up in front of this podium. They did make some headway. When we went to Punta Mundi, we captured documents, we got some scientists, we got some hardware. The Russians also got some documents, some scientists, and some hardware. It wasn't until 1947 that we were able to capture a craft. A whole craft, not all together, but it was everything. And that occurred near the city of Roswell, New Mexico. There were dead aliens recovered from that craft. In Project Grudge, I saw photographs of these dead aliens, of the craft. I saw photographs of live aliens. I saw photographs of autopsies, internal organs. I saw photographs of the alien designated EB, or EBE, which was held in captivity from 1949 until June 2nd, 1952, when he died. I saw the history of what they had been able to at that point put together. From incidences in the 1800s, which involved aliens and their craft. I saw the names of projects. I saw a project that was to fly recovered alien craft that had been recovered intact and undamaged, and some of them were recovered intact and undamaged. And how that happened, I have no idea. It was called Project Red Light, and first was conducted from the Tonopah test range in Nevada test site, and then was moved to a specially built area, built by President Eisenhower, called Area 51, codenamed Dreamland, in the Groom Dry Lake area of Nevada test site, by secret executive order. It does not exist officially. If you ask anyone, or if I write letters to the government, they will tell you it does not exist. However, if you go out there at several places and see it, fly outside the boundaries and look down and see it, you know it's there. But according to the government, it doesn't exist. The project to test fly these crafts was ongoing until sometime in 1962, when a craft blew up not far from the test site, in the air. The explosion was seen over a 3-state area. The pilots were killed. They had no idea what happened or why the craft blew up, but they put Project Red Light on hold until a later date when the aliens supplied us with 3 crafts and personnel to help us learn how to fly them. That project is ongoing, and we now have not only alien crafts that we are flying, we have crafts we have built using the captured technology, and some of the UFOs that people report seeing in the United States and maybe even elsewhere are flown by United States personnel. That may come as a shock to you. We have technology way beyond the limits of what we have been told. A lot of our development technology since the end of World War II has been due to the exchange of technology which occurs in the Area 51 on a regular basis. It's ongoing. When James Oberth, Professor Oberth, retired, many of you do not know who he is. Not too many space people in here. Professor Oberth was probably one of the greatest rocket scientists and space commenters that ever lived. When he retired, the government gave him a special award. There was a press conference, all kinds of ceremony, and when he got up to speak, he said, "Gentlemen," and I quote Professor Oberth, he said, "Gentlemen, we cannot take credit for all of the technological developments that we have had in the last decade. We have had help." And that's where he stopped. One of the reporters raised his hand and said, "Professor Oberth, can you tell us what other countries helped us?" He said it was those little guys from out in space. And then he got down and would not comment any further. Now this occurred in 1959. I can go on, but time does not allow it. I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there are all kinds of things going on all the time. We are making rapid progress in exposing it. Since I have begun talking, people have been coming out of the woodwork at rapid rate. Who knew and have pieces of this puzzle and are helping us put it together, because I don't have all the answers. I saw an awful lot of material. I've remembered an awful lot of it. I have probably, in my remembering, made some mistakes, and I guarantee you they are minor ones if I have. We have just recently, for those of you who didn't believe that the Jason Society of the Jason Scholars, the secret group, existed, we now have a letter from the Pentagon with 51 names of the Jason Scholars. An admission from the Pentagon that they hold the highest security clearance in the nation. An admission from the Pentagon that they hold the protocol rank of Rear Admiral and are treated as such on any military installation or in any government office. There are 6 Nobel Prize winners on that list. There are the elite of the scientific world. They are the only ones who really know the truth about the technology today and about the real science of physics. Because the one that we are being taught all the time, if you send your kids to college to learn physics, you're wasting your money because they're teaching them stuff that does not work. It's not true. It's not real. Gravity is not what we think it is. There is a unified theory. We already know what it is. It's what makes these crafts work. It's absolutely incredible what's going on. How many of you keep up with Billy Goodman's show on KVEG out of Las Vegas? For those of you who don't know, I would try tuning in on any night between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. It's 8:40 on your AM dial, and the subject every night are those subjects that no other media person in the United States will touch with a 10-foot pole every single night except Saturday night. It's the only show that you can call in and talk to another caller. You've got 3 minutes to say whatever you want to say, as long as you do not cuss, swear, slander anyone. And every night, they're helping to expose this. When John Lear and I first said what was going on out at Groom Lake, everyone said, "You're nuts. There's nothing going on at Groom Lake." The listeners of Billy Goodman's radio show put together an excursion and went up to Groom Lake, and they all, ever since, every night, they go up there and watch them test fly the alien craft every night. The first night, they had 100 people there, and 100 people saw 4 alien craft fly, doing things that no airplanes and no helicopters can do. Now, they don't tell us anymore that there's nothing happening at Groom Lake. What they tell us now is there's no such thing as aliens. It's all government secret projects. That's okay, because we'll prove that wrong too eventually. It just takes a while, because where we were, it's not where we're at. I'm really happy about that. Now, if you want to see what's happening right now, keep watching your movies, keep watching your television commercials, your alien programs on television. Read Whitley Strieber's Majestic, which is part of the plan called Majestic, to test the reaction of the population to the presence of aliens on the Earth. And I have just finished my study of Whitley Strieber's book, Majestic, and I am going to tell you right now that most of the documents in there that he says are fiction are real documents that came right out of Project Grudge. It's part of the government's campaign to leak information out in ways that they can always deny that it's real. There's only one thing wrong with the information in that book. The stories of the characters in there I know nothing about. What I'm talking about are the supposed government documents that he has in the book. I am telling you tonight they are real. Those are some of the same documents I saw in Project Grudge back between 1970 and 1973. And where we have wondered before. Now we know that Whitley Strieber is working for the government. And we had a suspicion anyway, because in the front of his book he states that he got the information and was helped by a research team of Moore, Chandry, and Friedman. William Moore has publicly admitted on July 1st that he is an agent of the United States government, and we know that the others are as well. This is going to come out, and the reason they are doing it the way they are doing it is they know eventually you are going to find out that it's all true and real. They are desensitizing you so you are not shocked. So there is no collapse of society as we know it, so that the religious structure doesn't fall to pieces, so that the stock market doesn't go crazy, because these were their original fears. Now, there's nothing we can do about the last one because it's already happened. There will be a segment of the population that worships the aliens, even though they are no different than us. They are just from somewhere else. And they may look a little different. They're not gods, but there are already people worshiping the aliens, and they predicted this would happen when they slapped the secret stamp all over this stuff. You know, there's really nothing wrong with what's been happening except for the 3 things. Cooper forgot to mention the 3rd thing, or was sidetracked, or included it in the 2nd. Number 1. When they decided to keep it a secret, they needed to finance it. They couldn't tell the public, so they couldn't tell Congress. They decided to finance it with the sale, importation, and sale of drugs. Now, in the documents that I read in Operation Majority, it specifically stated that when George Bush was the president and CEO of Zapata Oil, he, in conjunction with the CIA, organized the first large-scale drug importation into this country from South and Central America by fishing boats to the offshore oil platforms of Zapata Oil, and then from there into the beach, thus bypassing all customs inspections and law enforcement inspections of any kind. They are still bringing in drugs to limited extent in this manner. Another manner is by CIA contract aircraft, which one of their bases of landing is Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. We have affidavits from air controllers who have vectored the planes in, who have made sure that they were not interfered with in any way. We have affidavits from personnel at Homestead Air Force Base who say the planes have been met by Jeb Bush, who is George Bush's son. We have affidavits from people who work in the Gulf of Mexico in the offshore oil business that yes, indeed, drugs are coming in, at least some of them from the offshore oil platforms. So at that point in the lecture, the audience applauds and states, "Just say no." Pardon? Right, just say no. Well, that's what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, with your help. We are going to say no, no more. And you have to do it. You have to act. You either have to act or watch your country go down the tubes. Now, that's one of the things that's wrong. The next thing that's wrong is to keep the secret. They killed a lot of people who tried to leak it out. And if I hadn't done it the way that I did it, you wouldn't be seeing me anywhere standing or walking on this earth now. They killed President Kennedy during the workshop. For those of you who haven't seen the tape, I will show you on the tape who shot the president and why. Between 1970 and 1973, in Operation Majority, it stated verbatim that President Kennedy ordered MJ-12 to cease the importation and sale of drugs to American people, that he ordered them to implement a plan to reveal the presence of aliens to the American people within the following year. His assassination was ordered by the policy committee of the Bilderbergers. MJ-12 implemented the plan and carried it out in Dallas. It involved agents of the CIA, Division 5 of the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Office of Naval Intelligence. President Kennedy was killed by the driver of his car. His name was William Gere. He used a recoilless, electrical-operated, gas-powered assassination pistol that was specially built by the CIA to assassinate people at close range. It fired an explosive pellet which injected a large amount of shellfish poison into his brain, and that is why in the documents it stated that President Kennedy's brain was removed. If you've studied the case, you will find that indeed his brain disappeared. The reason for that is so that they would not find the particles of the exploding pellet or the shellfish poison in his brain, which would have proved conclusively that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the assassin. In fact, Lee Harvey Oswald never fired a shot. He was a patsy. At this point, Mr. Cooper pauses briefly, and a lady in the audience asked the obvious question, "Why haven't you been assassinated? If they were to kill me right now, what would you think?" Cooper paused. "That's the truth," several people claimed. "I've got them right where I want them. If they touch me, everyone who has ever heard me talk is going to be absolutely enraged and is going to know that everything that I have said is true. As long as they don't touch me, there's going to be some of you who are always going to be wondering. But eventually, we are going to bring out enough proof, and if you're here doing the work during the workshop, you're going to see an awful lot of it that's going to prove to you that it is true, it's real, and it's happening. Okay, I've tried to cover a lot of stuff just briefly because there's no time in 45 minutes to get into everything very much. At this point, Mr. Cooper then announced the scheduling workshop session of the following day. Intangible proofs could be seen, but the transcriber was unable to attend. He then opened the floor for questions and answers. A muffled question was barely heard coming from the front of the room, which, in essence, asked, "What about all of the people in the press and others who were in Dallas and who saw the assassination? Couldn't they tell where the shot had come from? Why didn't they come forward? There must have been plenty." There was. We know that there was at least 18 who were all murdered within 2 years of the event. The odds of that happening are 1 in 3 trillion, Cooper replied. Again, a muffled question. Why did the driver have to shoot Kennedy? Because the other fools missed. There were a total of 3 shots fired at President Kennedy. 1 hit him in the throat that did not kill him. 2 of them hit John Conley. The one that was fired from the grassy knoll hit the president in the throat. The other 2 shots came from directly behind the limousine, not the schoolbook depository building. The hit Governor Conley in intelligence community circles is known as a can-do man because he took 2 hits and still kept his mouth shut. How is it that the driver sitting on the front left-hand side of the car was able to blow off the right side of Kennedy's brain when the bullet actually entered it? And wouldn't it have been virtually impossible? Another person asked. Mr. Cooper seized the gist of this question and injected. For those of you who have been listening to all of these talk show hosts, whose job it is to be a talk show host, and who have not done any legitimate research into this, if you come to the workshop, I will show you on the tape how it was done. You will see that Kennedy was, in fact, slumped over against Jackie. His head was turned. It was very simple. It was easy, and you will see it with your own eyes. Another muffled, off-mic question from the member of the audience inquired why no one else had come forward with the information Mr. Cooper was disseminating, and why those who knew it had kept it secret for so long was quickly answered. It hasn't been. I'm talking about it right now. Bill English was talking about it 8 years ago, but everyone laughed at Bill English. John Lear's been talking about it for 3 years, and everyone laughed at him. Now there's so many people talking about it, people are starting to listen, and it's about time. Because it's about time that we quit being fools. And that's exactly what they think we are. And we prove it to them every day. The next question dealt with the alien technology and asked, in essence, hasn't anyone else, other than our government, come up with the energy technology that the aliens have? To which Mr. Cooper answered, there's been quite a few people who have come up with it, and they've been stopped, and they'll all continue to be stopped because once you have it, you have free energy. Once you have free energy, they no longer have to they have power over you. Do you understand? That's why they stop it. Another question? In the film of the assassination, which was examined greatly by experts, why didn't they conclude that Kennedy's driver shot him? To which Cooper asked, examined by whom greatly? Most of the film that you can purchase has that segment cut out, and you can always tell it by the person running in the background. They'll run up to here, all of a sudden, they'll be down here running. You will see in most of the clips that you've ever seen on television or in the movies or that you're able to get your hands on, you'll see William Greer start to turn like this. Then a muffled comment from the audience. Then Cooper answered, that's because they clipped it out. And on a lot of them, I bet you most of you, every time you've seen the clip on television, never looked at the driver anyway. If you're really honest with yourself and with me, you know your eyes were right on Kennedy. A woman asked if any of the alien technology was being used in present-day military equipment and was answered, yes. There's a lot of alien technology contained in the stealth bomber. That's right. The stealth fighter is flying for 10 years before you even knew it existed. As the hour drew late, another question, more clearly stated, was asked of Mr. Cooper. Before you let us out of here, there's a bunch of us here wondering, what can we all do to help bring this all out? A single word, revolt, issued from several listeners simultaneously, but Cooper responded, don't revolt. What you need to do is what you should have been doing all along. You need to get involved with your government. The first thing you need to do is purchase a copy of the Constitution, which I know that most of you don't have anywhere in your house. And if I were to go around this room and ask each person what the Constitution says, most of you couldn't tell me what the Constitution says from your grocery bill. And that's the truth. And that's your country. So if you don't know what your Constitution is, you're dead already. So the first thing you do is get a copy of the Constitution. The second thing you do is learn it. The third thing you do is start calling your senators and representatives and the President of the United States, and you start leaning on them, and you tell them, unless you straighten up the government, and unless we start getting the truth, and I mean the whole truth, and no more of this baloney, this is the last job you're going to ever have, period. And I'll do everything in my power to make sure that comes true. And then write them frequently, saying the same thing. And then when they're in your area, in their offices, take a little delegation and go and see them. And make them understand that they are going to be living in poverty because they are not going to have a job anymore come election day. You see, the secret government may own the executive branch, but you people, all of us, we own the Congress, and the Congress makes the laws, and the Congress can impeach the entire executive branch. You also have the right to petition the government for a redress of injuries. So, you are powerful. You've just forgotten that you're powerful. You've forgotten that vote that you haven't been doing every time an election comes around, that vote has abdicated your power. That vote you didn't cast abdicated your power and gave it to those who are subverting the Constitution and ruining this country. A gentleman then asked, what was traded to the aliens for their technology? People and animals, replied Cooper. Another man asked, is the Soviet Union in on any of this? The Soviet Union and the United States of America has been close allies since the end of World War II and have been closely participating in the secret space program all of this time. The Soviets have the same thing we have, yes. What you see happening in the Soviet bloc right now is not the result of people standing up and saying, we want to be free. It's the result of international bankers saying, you tear down these barriers and you'll meet the West halfway. Give your people some freedom. The West is going to take some freedom away from their people so that we can put together a one world economic system and have all of the power. That's what's happening. If you don't believe it, stick around and watch. A dubious woman then asked, why was the shellfish poison necessary? A lot of his brain was blown off anyway. Cooper, the shellfish poison? If you go to kill someone, one thing I learned it really good. I learned it especially good when I went to Vietnam. Just because you shoot someone doesn't mean they're going to die. And if they don't die, they're going to be mad. And if they've got a gun, you're dead. So, you want the first time to be the last time. So if you really want to kill somebody, you don't play around. If you really want to kill somebody, you kill them. You don't play. You make sure that when you shoot them, they are dead. That way they can't hurt you. Can't hurt you at all. Regrettably, the next question was totally unintelligible, but thankfully, Mr. Cooper had a good public address system to amplify his reply. The first moon landing was May 22nd, 1962, or excuse me, that was the first landing on Mars. I'm sorry, May 22nd, 1962, was the winged probe that used a hydrazine propeller, flew around approximately 3 orbits and landed on May 22nd, 1962, was a joint United States/Russian endeavor. The first time that we landed on the moon was sometime during probably the mid-50s. Because at that time when President Kennedy stated that he wanted a man to set foot on the moon by the end of the decade, we had already had a base there. What about Mars? Came another quick question. We have a base on Mars as well, Cooper calmly replied. When did that happen? I don't know the exact date, but I know the project's name. It's called Adam and Eve. How long have you known about this? Well, I revealed it publicly for the first time July 2nd, 1989. And within 3 weeks of time, I revealed it publicly. The government, to get American people not to listen to me, came out and said that they planned to build a base on the moon and a colony on Mars. Now, 3 days before my speech, representatives from NASA said, we can never have a colony on Mars. It's impossible that there's a colony on Mars because Mars is a dead planet. It's not a dead planet. They've lied to you about Mars. My name is Dave, unintelligible. I'm a representative of the CRYPTIDS Institute, and I would like to know why it was that when we sent a representative down to your home at your request, you failed to produce any documentation to substantiate your allegations. In the first place, it wasn't at my request. I never contacted the CRYPTIDS Institution in my life. I was on the Carol Hemingway show. She contacted the Institute. She told Daniel Sheehan that I had just said something about Bush and drugs on her show. He called me and told me he wanted to send an investigator. In fact, he told me to even help the investigator because he was new at his job. His name was Wayne Nelson. He was a very good gentleman. He stayed at my house for 2 days, slept overnight on my couch. I gave him everything I had. I never told Daniel Sheehan that I had any documents. I never told Wayne Nelson that I had any documents. In fact, what I told Wayne Nelson, and I quote, Wayne, if I did have the documents, I couldn't admit it. And I don't know you from Adam. And I don't know Daniel Sheehan from Adam. And what makes you think I would give them to you? Who am I going to give them to, and how quick they are going to disappear? That was my thought. Wayne Nelson also came to my house with a stack of documents this thick, already substantiating the presence of aliens and extraterrestrial crafts on this planet. And they are keeping it a secret because they are afraid somebody will laugh at them and they'll lose their credibility. We need some patriots in this country, not people trying to make a name for themselves, trying to expose some drug runners, because those are just bagmen. The real crook is in the White House, and you can tell that to Daniel Sheehan. Why didn't Jackie Kennedy report the source of the lethal shot? Asked another audience member. Who's she going to tell? The Secret Service just killed her husband. They're assigned to protect the president. Also, who had her children? The same Secret Service had all her children at that time. Wasn't the craft at Roswell, New Mexico destroyed and all the aliens killed? Another young man asked. All the aliens were dead, but the craft was not completely destroyed. It was severely damaged, yes. On an unrelated note, an older gentleman asked, does that mean that Alternative 3 is true? Alternative 3 is absolutely true. So is Alternative 2. Then a man in his late 20s or early 30s raised his hand, said something unintelligible, and was apparently recognized by Mr. Cooper, who asked him to take to the podium and address the audience. This is that man. What I said was that I thanked him, Cooper, very much for coming forward and saying something. A lot of my friends out here know that I was involved in the United States Special Forces UFO tracking and research from the years of 71 to 75. My name is Richard Murray. I was based out of the 71st TAC Control Flight, MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. We were Mobile Radar Command. That was combat and war ready. We could be loaded on aircraft within an hour, and many times were taken into areas to set up radar. A lot of times we were set up around England's Air Force Base because that's where they have the altered temperature weather control, where they can test various aircraft for their shrinkage and their dimension change during altered temps. So, I was told to shut up twice in 1982, and then they finally threatened my parents' life, so I stayed quiet. And that's when Wendell Stevens was taken off the streets, just like that. and I hid for quite a while and decided to come back out when I heard that you, Mr. Cooper, of such a high rank as you are, and I felt just in saying that your credentials are true, and that what you have to say, everything that you've said here today, I've heard before behind closed doors. And you've really tied the link for me to the Kennedy killing. There's a few more links that have to go on with the Colombian cartel and the money laundering. I think there's more than one cartel involved, and they are shutting one of them down so one can maintain power. It just seems to be the way it works. A muffled question came from someone in the audience regarding the person named Colonel Stevens. Stevens, Colonel, is out of jail now, replied Murray, who was quickly asked another question I couldn't hear, to which he answered, I sure hope to hell so. He's a wonderful man. I give him my utmost respect. It was one of the saddest days in my life to see what happened to him. But I don't care what you say about Wendell Stevens. In my heart, you can't discredit that man to me. I don't care who the hell you are. I won't listen to it. You know, he's not that kind of man. I don't care what you say. I know him personally. The lecture was essentially over. The Alternative 2 and Alternative 3 that were referred to briefly are, just guessing now, 2 government contingency plans. 1, declare martial law, and invalidate the Constitution on the premise that a terrorist group had entered the country with a nuclear weapon with plans to detonate it in a major city. All dissidents would be rounded up and placed in concentration camps, and the press and media would be nationalized. All of this if the information becomes public before they want it to, or if the aliens attempt to take over, and 2, another contingency plan to contain or delay the release of this information, the details of which I am probably wrong about anyway. Mr. Cooper was a man who appeared to be in his late 40s, of medium height and weight, and was dressed casually during the lecture. His hairline was receding slightly. He carried himself with confidence and purpose. Bill Cooper, as he was called by several of the in attendance, is not a professional speaker. His presentation lacked the polish of repeated deliveries, which all of the lectures had during the expo, but what it lacked in fine-tuning was easily made up in its content. At 1 p.m. Mountain Time, November 6th, we received a call from Officer Frank Valenzuela from Arizona Department of Public Safety. His call came to us as a result of our calling the sheriff's office to confirm that the incident had happened. He informed us that this level of entrapment for Mr. Cooper started at 11:40 p.m. Mountain Time, November 5th, 2001, by luring Bill Cooper away from his home, which sat atop of a hillside in the community of Edgar, Arizona. His physical address was 96 North Clearview Circle, Edgar, Arizona. The departments of Edgar and Apache law enforcement were working together. They claimed they had gone out to serve 3 felony warrants pertaining to someone having had a semi-automatic pistol drawn on them by Bill Cooper. At this time, we do not have that info as to whom that was who filed the complaint. Officers deliberately caused a ruckus to get the man away from his home to create this entrapment. He went down the hill away from his home to the automobile to see what the ruckus was. It was 2 law enforcement officers in plain clothes. He spoke to them and got back into his car to go back to his house, when out of hiding came a patrol car that blocked his return home. He put his hands on the car window, as we assume that is what he was ordered to do. When they approached his car, he pulled out to get around the other car. He got out of his car and tried to run home. Shots were fired. He returned fire, hitting one officer in the head twice, who is in surgery at St. Joe's Hospital. The other officer continued to fire until Cooper was dead. Please keep in mind this report was given to us by Sheriff's Office And here are the numbers: 928-333-5580 or 1-800-352-1850. All right, folks. I truly wish I was able to meet Milton William Cooper, or Bill. He brought to light so many terrifying cover-ups that the government is doing. And what did they label him as? A conspiracist theory, or conspiracist, or conspiracy theorist. Former naval intelligence, former Air Force, former Navy. There's a difference in naval intelligence and the United States Navy. Not many people really realize that the Department of Navy is different than the Navy. And this man worked for all three of the highly intelligent departments of the military. Air Force, as many of you do know, is super into education and battles won by brains over than might, as well as the Navy. This guy was a true hero. And his book, Behold the Pale Horse, just when I first read it, when I was first introduced to the book, it really knocked me for a loop. I first was introduced to it. It was the winter of 1998. The book was out for 7 years. I still have my original copy. And I got a new copy because they changed a few pages in it. They actually took pages away from the original publishing of the book some 10 years later. So I had gotten mine prior to them doing so. Just a true American hero. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. You know what, crazy enough, the X-Files uses phrases that Bill Cooper used to use. Silent weapons for quiet wars was one of his kind of terms he used to say. And that was said quite a bit by Mulder in the X-Files. Anyway, guys, thank you for supporting the channel. Your support is what makes the channel continue to grow and go, what makes this channel special. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and always hyper vigilant, as well as informed. Keep an eye on your children, your pets, your family, friends. These creatures, these things that we discuss on this channel are real. Not just Dogman, Bigfoot, crawlers, everything. The Dulce War, the super soldier programs, the genetic modifications by the alien agenda, one world government. And we need to stay safe, and we need to share this information with the people that we do love and care about, because it really may save someone's life someday. It may save your sister, your brother, your uncle, your aunt, your father, your mom's life someday, just by, casually mentioning something that you find interesting or that really pops in your head. And with that, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the answers, and God bless.